Nyawa, for joining us this afternoon. Hi, everyone. Scano, Jody Nigasso. My name is Jody Harbour. I identify as an urban Indigenous woman. I'm a co-founder of Grandmother's Voice, and I'm so happy that all of these amazing women here have agreed to show up today and talk about what's really close to our heart as women, as community members. I'd like to just kind of do a little opening and an addressing this beautiful day today where I'm at. I'm in Windsor, Ontario. Traveled here to visit my family, and so I'm in my childhood home, and it feels good for me because this is where my true journey began, and my roots in finding out the truth about my family. And so a gift that I've been given along my journey is just understanding when we come together, how important it is to acknowledge everyone that shows up in this space, whether you're showing up right now in this moment or you'll visit later. It's important, and especially right now in this time, to come together and really just honor each other, honor the past, and honor what's coming for us. And so today's a really beautiful day where I'm at, and would like to just take this moment to honor all of the women here for the work that you do and who you are, acknowledging the energies that we usually share from my Haudenosaunee connection, the Thanksgiving address, which many people would look at that from a mainstream perspective as a land acknowledgement. We kind of like to teach along the way, as we're doing this work, how important it is to bring people's consciousness and awareness in the moment, bringing people, that's what we talk about as Indigenous people, bringing our hearts and minds together as one. This is why we do this work, why these awareness days like today, have become really important in our society, because we get busy, and if there's one thing that I've learned recently from the elders who have been guiding me on my journey, is that it's really important to remember what is our people have sacrificed for us. And it's not just the Indigenous people here, but our ancestors, everyone's ancestors from those lands that have been colonized. This is where we are coming together today in our society, really reflecting on where we've been, what we've I think we've been in survival mode, we'll say, because now we're coming in and making using these opportunities, these platforms, to come together and really find a way to come together and fix what was broken, or what's broken, what was taken, and really say enough is enough. And it's time to start to bring in all of these understandings so that we can have a good life, so that we can live in a good way. And so in this time with these beautiful women, we're going to share some of our messages and our heart messages and why we do what we do. And so just honoring all of the energies that Mother Earth and the Creator provides for us is really what we do right now in this moment. So we show gratitude. And I believe that when we do this, it really does lift us. It lifts our spirits and reminds us that we're all just human beings trying to have a good life and include people that are not included, and protect those who are marginalized or have been left out or have been treated or thought of, or these biases created from the past that have not allowed them to live a good life. And so Nyawa for being here, and we do have a comments list here. So for those of you that are that will be joining us or are here now, please share, ask questions. These women have tons of information to share, and so without wasting any more moments, I'd like to just welcome. Everyone's going to take some time and introduce themselves, and I'm really honored that to introduce Bev she has been one of my like major supporters. I don't know that she, really realized it, but I remember the first day I met her, I walked with her beside her at a red dress event. And it was actually, if you remember this, Bev, down, may have been the second time I was with you, but down in the square in Oakville, where everyone spoke. We came together, and I was there, and I was actually, I proudly stood there with this beautiful leather jacket with tons of beading, and it was really my first time that I was like, wow, I can do this. I can be an Indigenous woman in my community and show up and advocate for something that was close to my heart. And a part of my story is that my great grandmother, who was Cayuga, she was actually murdered by her husband, and so I found this out doing my genealogy, and so during that time, that part of my journey is when I found out that truth, and it was very close in time that I found out that truth through my research, and it just so happened that you guys were your WAM women of Halton were hosting this, and so from my heart to yours, Nyawa, for doing this work for so many years, from like since the 80s, right? And making this space and time. So I'd love to, just kind of introduce you and give you a couple minutes to tell everyone what, just the trailblazer you are and what you've done for our community.
I guess, thanks, Jody. It's good to be here. You've given me a lot to think about in getting ready for today. And I've been with WAM since the very beginning, Women of Halton National Movement, in 1981 when we started. We started because we were bringing a new constitution to our country, and it didn't have anything in it about equal rights for women. So 1,400 women went down to Ottawa, caused a fuss, and we ended up getting the Equality Clause into our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And so that is to protect women, and is to protect all women. And we formed a group, Women of Halton Action Movement. We were going to be a lobby group, and we were going to take action. And we don't provide a service. We're just for advocacy, and to try and to work with politicians, to work with our community, certainly to work with Halton Women's Place and the Women's Center and Savas. And we have over the years, and WAM has very often led all the things for Take Back the Night, and for Take Back the Night in, that's October. And Sisters in Spirit over the years, until we got involved with Jody, and then Jody and Grandmother's Voice ended up being more active and taking over and helping us and teaching us so much. We've met in circles with Grandmother's Voice. We've looked at ourselves as privileged white women, because the women in WAM are mainly white privileged women. A lot of us for the last 40 years, but we've worked on these issues, and we've tried to work within the community to change things. But I just wanted to mention something today that I thought was pretty good. Have you heard about the red dress alert? Just this week, it was passed by 100% of our politicians in the House of Commons. And it's similar to the Amber Alert. When a child goes missing, you can't find them. We're now going to have a red dress alert. Everybody's agreed to it in the House of Commons. And if a missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, or two-spirit, or gender diverse people, there will be a red alert, just like there is the one that we have for children right now. And it's if someone is missing, because for so many years the women have been missing and nobody's known about it. So this is really something that everybody in the House agreed on, which just doesn't happen very often. So that was sort of one good thing that happened this week. And as far as WAM goes, the first issue we worked on, and the first letters we wrote, and the first meeting that we had in 1981 was around the issue of Indigenous women losing their status if they married a white man, although the men did not lose their status. So over the years, we've worked and that's been changed somewhat. It will never be perfect, but it's better. It's a lot better. And But so we've always felt close with the Indigenous women. Personally, I can speak for myself. I was involved in the 60 scoop. I was a mother with 2 little children living in British Columbia, just came from Manitoba. I'm originally from Manitoba, and got there. And I got a phone. I didn't know anybody. I had these 2 little children. It was a thing when your husband gets transferred and you just pick up everything. And within a month, you're living in another province. And I got a phone call one day asking if I would consider having a teenager come and live with me. And I said, well, I don't know. But and it was the woman next door. And she said, I have 2 teenagers that aren't getting along. Could one of them come and live at your house? And I didn't even know what I said. Well, I talked to Jim and he said, sure. Anyway, and so Eliza came to live with us. Eliza was 16 years old. And a little later, we got a phone call from somebody else saying, could Wilma come and live with you? I said, yes. Anyway, Eliza and Wilma were Indigenous. They were from the villages of Bella Bella and Kitkatla. And they lived with us for 2 years until we got transferred again, because my husband got transferred. But while they were living, we got along really well. We were like a family. Our place became the meeting place for Indigenous youth, students. But never did I ask the question, why are you coming down from Kitkatla or Bella Bella?
Yeah.
Like, why didn't I ask that question? And we enjoyed our time together, but it's only when we started really talking about the unlife we provided for Indigenous people by taking away their land, their voices, their language, their children. Imagine having your children taken away from you. Can you think of anything more tragic than that? If somebody came in and scooped up your children, and children, the one thing they do need is nurturance. And they get that from their families, from their parents. They didn't have that because they didn't have their families. But a lot of us in Canada never paid any attention. We're going on with our lives, but we know now, and we are educated Canadians, and we have no right to not work with the Indigenous and to try and help them to get back all the rights and freedoms that were taken away from them. So that has been a big issue in my life, just from that personal experience myself. Participating in something and not even knowing that I was, because you didn't ask questions. That's really important, that we ask questions. And so over time, we looked at our privilege as white women in WAM. And then the next thing we did is we got in touch with the Grandmother's Voice, and we tried to learn from the Grandmother's Voice. And we met with them, we had circles with them. We attend their events, we volunteer to help them. This is the women in WAM. Also GASP, you've heard about GASP, Grandmothers Act to Save the Planet. Well, that's WAM too. I don't know if you've heard of Advancement of Women Halton. We're part of that too. I'm sure I know the other women here are aware of Advancement of Women Halton. Anyway, we're learning, we're trying to do a good job. Personally, I am getting so much personal from the knowledge that I'm gathering from the grandmothers. So I think the women in WAM, they're up for every issue. They always have been. But we need to show up and collaborate and learn as much as we can, read as many books, look at our history, and work with, there's so many women politicians now that we didn't used to have. We have more now. And we have nurturance. You couldn't give your children nurturance because they weren't with you. So how do children in residential schools learn how to nurture if they've never been nurtured? That is, anyway, I've worked with people and I know more about nurturance and the importance of that in every child's life. We took that away from our Indigenous people. And then we expected them to just know everything and be everything without having a mom or a dad. it's terrible. And I'm glad that Canadians are finally seeing what's going on. And I did meet with Eliza when we moved back to Vancouver after being in Toronto and going to England. I did meet again with Eliza. She came. I had two more children by then, so I had four. She came to visit and see them. She had been so in love with my second little boy, and so we spent some time together. So that was really nice. And she had come from her fishing community, so she had gone up north. And boyfriend who had a boat. She was loving her life. She was fishing. Anyway, there's 100 things I could talk about the women in WAM and all the work that they've done over the years, because we were the first ones to really saying we were feminists. And I started, I guess, 50 years ago in British Columbia, and we couldn't go anywhere unless we put on if we wanted the women in Vancouver to believe we were feminists, we had to wear a plaid shirt and boots. And then if we wanted to start a women's center in Port Coquitlam, we had to go to City Hall and wear a four-trail suit in order to work with some people. That's changed at least. But we were able to start women's centers, shelters, sexual assault centers. Over the years, I've been involved in that, as have many women in WAM. They've been involved in Halton Women's Place, and SAPIS, Halton Violence Prevention Council. We were part of starting that. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to be here with you, and we'll just keep trying to do good work and keep meeting up with the grandmothers and learning from them. So that's it.
Great. So I think I'm next, right? Thank you so much for that, Bev. And I just want to say it's such an honor to be doing this work with all of you on this call. And having this conversation today. And Bev, like, you're part of why we exist here at Halton Women's Place. We have a whole list of women's names here that, started this up in Halton, and all of their advocacy, that has led to providing safe shelters for women across Ontario and Canada. But right here in Halton, your name's on that list. So I'm Lori Hepburn. I'm from Halton Women's Place. I'm the executive director here. And for those of you who don't know what Halton Women's Place is, we are the domestic violence women's shelter here in Halton. We have two shelters, one in North Halton and one in South, and 52 beds between our shelters, which are always full. Always full. So we see hundreds of women and children through our shelter doors every year. And we also see, between 400 to 600 women through community outreach programs every year. We are very committed to continuing to try to create safe spaces in our community for folks to talk about violence, to advocate for the needs and amplify the voices of survivors. We are very committed to preventing violence before it starts. So outside of our funding that we get from the provincial government, we actually actively pursue fundraising initiatives to run a public education programs in the school. And that's something we will always remain committed to, so that we can hopefully one day, it will be, when we are all long gone, but hopefully we can close shelter doors and they won't need to exist. So that's a little bit about what we do. You'll see we do lots of different advocacy and awareness events out in the community. Our latest one is, we're trying to put purple benches all across Halton to, let people know that it's okay to talk about it. There's a safe space. It has emergency numbers on it. And we really want to lift the stigma because there's so much shame associated with domestic violence. It's a hard thing for people to talk about. And we really want to lift that conversation up and, let people know that it's okay to talk about, and we're not going to accept it. It's not okay. So the more we do that, and every single time I hear a woman share their story, I can tell you another woman shares their story and another woman shares their story. And it's so healing. And I just feel so privileged to be a part of that. So as far as our work with Indigenous women, I need to tell you, I'm so grateful, Jody, for you and the grandmothers for charging here in Halton. and really providing us with some resources, because it's really been a challenge up until then. I'm certain that I have so many more women come through the doors of Halton Women's Place that are Indigenous, but are not necessarily sharing that or identifying as Indigenous, because there's so much history, systemic racism and discrimination and historical trauma associated with that. And so my goal is to continue to try to work with our team so that we can be a place for all women. So we want to, continue to work with our Indigenous partners like yourself. Jody has been so gracious and come into Halton Women's Place and seen our spaces, and, to make sure that, we are a comfortable space for Indigenous, almost working like as a consultant with us, right? How can we continue to learn, to do better, to make sure that our space is welcoming and safe for women. So as an organization, we are fully committed to continuing to, learn more, do the trainings, do the research. It's an ongoing conversation, and it will continue to be at Halton Women's Place as we, participate in our part in truth and reconciliation, and make sure that the women that need our services the most, which we know Indigenous women experience much higher rates of violence than their non-Indigenous counterparts. So I want to be a door. I want to be an open door to those women and let them know that, we are here to support them and do the best that we can, and providing culturally specific services for any women that comes in here. But certainly on a day like today, I want to highlight and amplify the voices of our Indigenous sisters that need that support.
Mm-hmm.
Lori, I absolutely love the bench concept, and certainly want to sit there with some of the other women here today sometime and enjoy a coffee together, an important conversation around that bench. I think that's a great opportunity for us to continue to advance the work that we're doing. I'm Kate Holmes. I'm the proud executive director of the Women's Center of Halton. And I will say I feel like the absolute newbie here, standing next to you very accredited women, and the time you have spent advancing women's rights. And I'm just at the tip of my journey with this, and wish that I had started sooner. But really privileged to be here standing next to you. We really are appreciating the opportunity to grow and to learn. And we really are just beginning our Indigenous journey. And, thanks to Jody and her counterparts for teaching us, this is just something that's important to us, but we really just didn't know where to start. And so Jody's kind of guiding us. Glad to be here and learning more. We've attended some workshops, but just there's so much more work we could be doing. I know days like today are so, so important, but I always say, why do we still need to have these days? Because not enough change has happened, and we need to continue to work. And it makes me sad that we still have to talk about International Women's Day and that we're fighting for equality. Why aren't we there already? And so, yes, it's important to acknowledge today, but more work needs to be done, and we shouldn't be fooled about the advancements that we have or haven't actually made in society. At the Women's Center of Halton, we are supporting all women in their journey. Yes, we are supporting women through crisis and trauma, but I will say we're supporting all women from start to finish in their journey. You name it, we have the opportunity for women to come together and have a coffee and connect. We have legal supports, but we also have book clubs. So people are coming to us and doing all sorts of growth work, and I feel very privileged to be a part of so many women's journeys. It's pretty awesome. And we continue to bring equality and equity forward, and still lots to be done there for sure. But I will also say, in some of the hard work that we are doing at the center, we're also seeing a lot of laughter and joy. And I think that needs to be forefront and present, that we need to be talking about how important laughter and joy is. In some of the hard times, you can find those really bright stars, and it's an opportunity for all of us to focus on that. The reason I do the work that I have had the opportunity to do the last couple of years is because I feel that all women have struggles, ups and downs. And through my life, I've had all sorts of supports. And that support network is what's allowed me to be successful. And I think that should be available to all women. And so that is what continues to fire me to do the work that I do today. And just the amount of support we get from the community is also extremely inspiring.
Thanks, Kate. That's a hard act to follow of all of you, Bev and Lori. I'm Sylvia Sass. I'm the executive director of SAVIS. It's the Sexual Assault and Violence Intervention Services of Halton. First of all, I really do want to sort of touch about the fact that we talked about collaboration and the strength of the women and the gender diverse folks that we work with. I'm always marveled and feel very honored by the fact that survivors come forth and have the strength that they have to actually tell their stories. Because those stories are very, very hard to tell. Because we know that a lot of people don't believe survivors of sexual assault. They think they're not truthful. Or if they are believed, often what happens is that the whole system, the whole justice system, often impedes the legitimacy of their sexual assault situation. So I think it's we've come, up to a certain point, but again, and especially for Indigenous women, in terms of belief, the stereotypes are still there with the police forces, with the justice system, even with counseling services or women's services, and we all have to realize that we all have to believe. We have to believe in women, and we have to believe in the fact that the courage it takes to disclose their personal journeys is one that we always have to really honor. So at SAPIS, we have a variety of services. We have a crisis line that's 24/7, and that's used, across Halton for folks to call in and to get support by trained volunteers. We also, as Lori, we also do public education. We have 2 staff who go into the schools and community centers. And again, speaking with young people about, healthy relationships, what is a sexual assault? It's really important for young people to know what's a good relationship and what's not a healthy relationship. Someone texting you 30, 40 times a day is not a healthy relationship. So it's debunking again what's a healthy relationship. And so our public educations do a lot of work with that. We also have counseling services where we provide support groups and supportive counseling for folks and women who live in Halton. We also, one of our programs that started a few years ago, about 6 years ago, was our anti-human trafficking program, which is doing really intense work with people who've been trafficked. And so again, when we go out and do public education, I think a lot of people think that doesn't happen in Halton. Well, it does happen in Halton. Mm-hmm. So, again, doing that public education and also doing that very intense work of women in the community to get them out of that cycle, because that cycle and the grips that human traffickers have on women is pretty strong. And so we really, again, support women in very intense ways to get out of that human trafficking situation that traffickers prey on women. They prey. So people have to, again, and when we talk about believing women, we have to believe women. We have to believe survivors of human trafficking, that it's grooming. It's not just done in a day. So just for us to be really mindful that when we're working with folks in the community, that it does happen in Halton. Again, very honored to be part of this this group, these wonderful, strong women leaders. And I look forward to that's part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. And thank you to everybody. My name is Chandrina Vera Martin. I'm the Executive Director of Thrive Counseling, and we're also the lead agency for the Halton Violence Prevention Council. Again, it is an honor to be here with all of you, my great colleagues. Thank you so much for all the work you've done before my time, and for Jody, who's been a bright little star who's come into my life. And I think the Grandmother's Voice has already done so much for our Halton community in raising so many Indigenous issues and in strengthening our own organizations. There's still a ton of work to be done, but I think it's been much advanced even in a very short period of time by what's happened so far. So for those of you who may not know too much about Thrive Counseling, we've had a lot of name changes over the years and mergers. So we do a lot of the family violence counseling in Halton for people who are maybe not accessing the shelter services. So we see over 700 women a year who are needing counseling around domestic and interpersonal violence. We also have the unique area of serving offenders as well too. So we also provide services to men and women who may be involved in partner violence. So we also provide some of those intervention services, because we know, and I think we all have realized over the years, that it is not women's responsibility to change violence against women on their own, that the folks who are perpetuating the abuse and the violence also need to be held accountable and also to be assisted in order to be able to change the trajectory of their own situation. So that's important and essential work. And I think those are some of the things that we hope to continue to move the needle on. The Halton Violence Prevention Council, again, Bev is one of those founding people with that who so much helped get that off the ground. So that's really wonderful to have a chance to be on screen with you. We work to end violence in our community of Halton. That's our mission and has always been that mission. That mission started from tragic occurrences against women and murders in our own community here in Halton. And that work, unfortunately, in many ways is continuing to this day. You know, the goal is to end it, to not need these services. And while there's been much progress, there has not been enough progress. It is still happening. It is still is strong an issue. The fears are still there for women every time in some ways that they either stay in their house or leave their house. And that is not, you know, what we want to see, you know, occurring still at this point in time in history. And even more powerful, of course, for the Indigenous population. I was at Queen's Park this week for a conference for our family service organizations, and we were talking about, you know, about the violence against women programs, and we were also talking about we do mental health programs as well. And one of our partners from Thunder Bay, you know, she raised her hand at Queen's Park and said, "Yes, this is all true. And where is the focus on Indigenous women and the special circumstances and issues that they face?" And, you know, everyone's went silent for a moment because all those things were not excluded. They were not as specifically mentioned and said. And I think that's one of those lessons that this has to be upfront and centered in every conversation that we have that's trying to improve the well-being of our community. So again, I'm really grateful to be here. I'm thankful for the work that we're all trying to do, the persistence that people have had to be doing this for decades and decades and decades, and also because of that hope that we all carry forward that this work will come to some completion at some point. So thank you very much for having me.
Wow. Thanks. Wow. I'm just so full. Like, you guys are amazing. Our women are amazing. The people that are here, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can see the comments that have been shared. There's a message here from Tony. So true, Tony. I love you. Love your daughter. Amazing work. Who you are as a just showing up and making these comments is true. More men need to know about this. This is one where I'm actually, if you're not familiar with the Moose Hide campaign, this is an Indigenous-led organization, and that's what I'm wearing my hide. And this is about you know, standing up against violence towards women and children. To, you know, the movement of men and boys. So that's just to kind of acknowledge, you know, what you were saying, Chandrina. You know, our elders that we work with, you know, they share so much knowledge, and, you know, all of this talk. We know we're in a time right now of action. You know, we need to do stuff. We've been talking and talking, and there's nothing wrong with talking. We know that, but we can get stuck in it, and we're stuck in trying to figure out. We have this knowledge. How do we really put it into action? And this is action right here today, because people are asking. You know, they're showing up and listening, and we're engaging, and it's Indigenous and non-Indigenous. It's in walking together. It's doing this work together. So, you know, it's always been that was one of our goals as Grandmother's Voice, was to how do we create these opportunities that, you know, may not be available, easily attainable, whatever, you know, because we're doing so much work. So we just had to do this. And it, you know, however we do it, we're showing up, and it's great to see like a steady 30 people watching this right now, knowing that there'll be more later as we share this. So we'll go back near the end and just kind of address some of these messages and thank yous and hearts, and you know, some questions about materials that we have that we utilize, I guess, you know, on our path, because it's really about sharing those, you know, sharing everything that we do and our resources. So, and just acknowledging, like I was a volunteer at the Women's Center when I was pregnant for my daughter, like 13 years ago. So I've been doing this work in the Halton region just as a woman, knowing that this has always been my passion. And I had a short time working for SAVIS, which really got me into understanding how this, how the nonprofit sector works, how the social service works, how society works, because I was really just living. Yeah, I was just being, in my life, not even really understanding the realities. And so it's important, and just for me to acknowledge that, what really thrusted me was one day a couple of years ago when I had just finished ceremony, and it was in COVID, the beginning of COVID. And I finished ceremony with the grandmas virtually because we couldn't meet in person, but we know we need to stay connected. And this is the truth of, Indigenous people who are finding their healing path right now, that it's really important to stay connected to that understanding, right? What was taken, like you said, Bev, what was taken, stolen from our people was that nurturing, that understanding of our true self, that we can heal ourselves and we can take care of ourselves. And so that's how I met Chandrina. Do you remember that, Chandrina? I was told by my, spirit ancestors, look this up, and their thrive was, and it was so important. That was the moment where it was like, we need to create this collective. We need to support this, the women doing this work in the community, because you all need support. And as an Indigenous woman, that's my responsibility. And it's a responsibility of all of these other organizations that do this work. We know as Indigenous people within these organizations, when we are on that healing path, it's our responsibility. So creating these circles supports each other, and we get to that place of hope, Kate, because we know we're not alone.
I just am thinking back to the amazing opportunity that I had to attend one of your healing circles. It was something that I had never done before, was very new to me, remained very open, and had quite an experience there that I can't describe, but it's an experience, it's life-changing. And I will always remember Grandmother Renee saying, and it has me thinking about collective and working together, is my water flows with your water. And I will always remember that guidance and those words, because it is so true. As we sit here together, we can't do anything in isolation. We are not going to affect any change in isolation, and our waters flow together.
And those are the I don't like to use the word simple, simplistic, basic, but this is really, what our elders say is a time right now where we're struggling to try to make something work, and trying to figure out these, ways of changing things. It really is that basic understanding of love that was really removed from our society. Yeah. Through religion and these systems, government. We know that they're meant to help, make things more efficient, but really what was taken and removed from those systems was this love, and supporting each other. And it's, so to me, it could be this simple. We just need to switch it a little bit.
Maybe simple, change that to roots, going back to roots, and how important that is to connect. And don't even get me started on how broken the system is that apparently is supposed to be so great. That is a soapbox I could talk about for hours. Our system here is not designed to actually support people.
Yeah, I can make a point with you. I so agree with nurturance. If nurturance is what helps us to be better people because we have been nurtured in love. But we live in a society, until it was just this year that we have a national childcare program. We've never had that in our country. But the one thing that goes along with that, the childcare, is childcare workers were about the poorest paid citizens, people that look after children. Their work is not seen as valued. That's nurturance. The idea of nurturance, which we took away from our Indigenous people, and it's been such a struggle. Women have worked for 50 years to get a national childcare program, and it's only now. It's been such a struggle. And the work that women do in nurturing we are in the workforce as many as men are. So we have to have a system within our country that nurtures our children. And we have to nurture each other. And as little children, you learn how to nurture, you create empathy. And the difference between what we've done with our girls and boys, we've allowed our girls, when we raise them up, to create empathy with themselves because they were encouraged, to care for, to give, to support. Our little boys were told to make money, be strong, win. It was a different kind of nurturance. I hope that's changing now. I think there's much more awareness of the importance of nurturing both our boys and girls, and just see themselves as human beings. Yeah, not sexism and all that stuff. I'm hoping that having a national child care system will save our children, will save a lot of our children, and they'll be more safe too. Because we're not all we're all not meant to be parents. We have to be taught as well.
Mm-hmm. And it goes back, there it is, like the conversation about our boys, right? We're in a time, when we do ceremony, by the way, tonight in Burlington, we have a ceremony. The grandmothers are doing a full moon ceremony honoring missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and gender diverse people. And we're excited for it. I wish I was there. I know I'll be there in spirit. We have several fire ceremonies happening actually in Burlington, one actually being led by a White Eagle who's in the community as well. So just, knowing that our community, which I believe like Halton region is a hub. We're a hub. Okay, Sylvia, this is why, Sylvia, right? Like we know that all of the trafficking and things that are reality is an affluent community hub, like the heart of Ontario. You have all these highways around it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that we're any different than any other community, but there's some real, I want to say magic, some movement happening in our community where we are coming together more, and just knowing that we are, we advocate for our men, right? Like all of these programs now, we've realized the importance of our men. They have been, how they say it from our Indigenous view is that, they really have been sacrificing too for holding that space for Indigenous knowledge and ways, and from that patriarchal place of protection, and they need to be honored, and their healing needs to be honored, right? That this is time that they can that we honor them for everything that they've done, but also know that it's time for us to support them, and especially in this time. But also know that missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, when we talk about that problem, genocide, however you want to say it. And thank you, Bev, for bringing up that alert. There are communities like ours that are doing, as much as we can by, displaying red dresses, giving content with that. But knowing that when we come together to pray, that's what we do, hope and pray and add hope to communities through our ceremonies. It's important to acknowledge the men and the women, and that we it's just time to move this along. But this has been from contact. That's what our elders say. It's been from contact that this was brought over in the violence. And so until we really look at that root issue, that this is embedded in our systems, the capitalism, everything that we've been talking about.
Patriarchy. Yes.
Patriarchy, right?
Yes.
When they have this thought that, Indigenous women are savages, or whatever they, the comments are, we need to just change that, and really hope that these conversations and ceremonies and Sisters in Spirit events and awareness days like this can really wake people up to know that it's time to change it. And we know it's been there for a long time. It's systemic.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was going to say, when we, for years, we've always thought of like gender-based violence and sexual assault. It's like it's someone else's issue.
Yeah.
Like thank goodness it's not happening to us. It's always over there. But more and more, it's an issue that we have. Like it's everyone's issue. And the more that people speak up for it, the more that we get engaged with it and say this is not okay. It's not behind closed doors. The more survivors can feel like at least someone's hearing them. Many times when we work with survivors, they've talked about the shame and the isolation of actually coming forth, as I said before. So they need to be believed, and we need to provide those spaces for survivors to be believed.
Yeah. As you're saying that, Sylvia, I was just, and I chatted a little bit about that when I first spoke, about the stigma and the shame and, just really needing to lift that in the community. But, you raised a good issue there. Sylvia, like, again, we all need to be a voice. It's not a women's issue, it's everybody's issue, but we also need to amplify the voices of those that are most impacted.
Yes.
And, when we go back to the importance of this day, every day, we're, remembering the women, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and S2. But we need to amplify those voices because they're not being heard. I had a statistic here that I wanted to share that, really caught me. Of course, I can't find it now that I'm, got you all on here, but, here it is. So Indigenous girls making up 7% of the total population of girls in Canada, yet they represented 50% of all female homicide victims in Canada between 2001 and 2017. Like, that's huge. That is just huge. And it's so alarming. And like, no wonder we have a red dress alert finally, right here in 2023. But what are we doing to address that issue? Right? Like, this is not, yes, there's gender-based violence. Yes, women are experiencing violence at alarming rates by men's violence. But Indigenous women are experiencing that, at least 6 times more likely. Yeah. So, really that issue has to be lifted up, and days like today need to continue to exist while we can to amplify those voices.
I would suggest that look where we're putting our money.
Yes.
We're, instead of putting more money into services to help people feel nurtured and become nurtured and support each other, we're putting all our money into the police. They're getting all the money, but not the nurturing communities that are trying to change things. And it's not that they shouldn't get money, but they can't be expected to be social workers, police officers. It's just too much. But when you look at who's getting the money, it's not the women's centers and the shelters and
Yeah.
I absolutely agree, but I just heard a very interesting thing about the police is that they're doing mental health ride-alongs. So they have a mental health practitioner that is now in the car for certain calls. Yes. And I think that's very cutting edge, intuitive. It makes sense. But again, we can't all be subject matter experts in all areas. So
no, it's too much to expect. Yeah.
But, funding is certainly a hot topic, and we're expected to do more with less every single day in this space.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's so important because we do want to look at those systemic issues, right? As you say, where the funding goes, what are we trying to get upstream of it? Even those great initiatives like the one that you just described, they're happening after the fact, right? We want to change things, as Bev was saying early on from the beginning, the work that we do in the schools, the education system, the dismantling of those systems such as patriarchy and colonialism that keep recreating the problem, even as we start, fighting to solve it day by day, hour by hour, year by year. So if we're not really addressing those core things and putting our attention there, those are the places that we're going to make the biggest change and not have to be continually fighting the same fight, day after day after day.
Well, this all resonates with me. Everything that you're saying. I think that I say it every time, our elders have the answers, right? They, when we can look at people and every day, know that we need to stay connected to ourselves every day. We've had this, challenges now with questioning our religion and our belief systems, and all of these things are being questioned right now. Everything from our government to the police, but really, how are we personally being accountable? And we're a huge supporter of Dennis Windego, and this is like the circle, right? That I know you're all, because we've invited him in, right? And when we had that, when Dennis said yes, I really would like to work with Grandmother's Voice. This is a gentleman that has been working in rural First Nations communities, northern communities alone. I say alone. He's got his support program and in his like MSW realm to support him. But, when we met the first time and we talked about his way of like connection to the land and healing, we were like, you need to reach everyone. He's that guy that, like you said, people that are doing this frontline work, we're making it so much bigger than it is. How are you grounding yourself? How are you being centered in the work that you're doing, and how are you being supported? So I'm really happy to say that Dennis will be back in June, and he's got some really great two full days in June 7th and 8th. And his approach is sharing this knowledge that so many people are like, how do I take this Indigenous way of knowing and being and apply it into my work? It's kind of like what I'm talking with your, like in your workspace or your space right now with Halton Women's Place, Lori, right? Like how do we, the knowledge you receive from the Indigenous grandmas and elders and, not appropriate it. There's no such thing about appropriation when it comes to being utilizing the Indigenous ways of knowing, connection to the land, the belief systems. That, how are you responding in a moment? How are you reacting when you see someone in trauma? How's your body reacting to this situation? These are things that we've missed in our education system, in our family units, things that we're just like pounding through, raising our family over the last, several decades. And I think that that's where we're at. Bev, you inspired me last week when we spoke about this, and that nurturing and adding these values back to our, to the people. So I truly believe that in all of this, it's great to send somebody who can maybe manage, a situation, with a police car or whatever in a police situation. But how is that officer being accountable to himself? And so I really hope that there's a place in time in our society that these Indigenous ways of knowing and being, people won't be so afraid to look at them and say, hey, we can apply that part of this teaching, like the grandfather teachings, into our policies or our terms of reference, or, how do we make our own workspaces really conscious? When I see an Indigenous girl walking alone in a, close to a reserve, when I'm picking her up or asking her if she needs a ride, is it really from a good place to support her instead of taking her somewhere else? How do we change that in that system? Because that's, the red dress alert, I think, is going to be so huge for people to wake up. It's really going to change things. So there's some really beautiful messages here. I just wanted to, I know I had a lot of stuff that I wanted to share within this time, and you guys covered it all. So I'm really honored for you sisters here that say such great things about Grandmother's Voice, because we're just doing it. We're following our heart.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do. And in the work that we do now, and especially when we have power in the place that we work, it's time to just move things. So I just wanted to, did anybody else, did you want to add anything before we go to some of these chats and finish up? No? Amazing. All of your organizations are listed on our, on our poster. So hopefully anyone listening, you can show up there, donate. They're all, doing really great work, and nonprofits. I wanted to just share the Moose Hide campaign. Well, Wham, I know, Bev, your group is not a nonprofit. I love it.
We can do anything. We're not indebted to anybody. If we don't.
No, yeah, I love that.
We have no money.
I know. That's
just.
I love it. We started like that, Grandmother's Voice started like that, but it was like, to really be seen, it had to be, you need to become, an organization of some sort to get some, to get more work done. But, we'll see where that leads us. We just finished an environmental scan in the Halton region that shows the lack of Indigenous services in the region. So I've been doing some work sitting at tables, figuring out and navigating the healthcare system in different ways that Indigenous people can, have a really easy access to support. So that'll be good to share. But going back to speaking about how we embed Indigenous ways of knowing into our organizations, there'll be some really great tools when we share that with our community in the next couple of weeks. So I'm really excited to move forward in that way. So I just wanted to share some of these messages that this one right here came up first. And this question was about a book. So I just thought I'd ask anyone here if they're reading any good books. And any of you have anything to offer? Not that you have time. I'm an Audible girl myself when I'm driving. There's a lot of so I guess it really depends on what kind of books you're looking for. If it's go ahead, yeah.
Do you want to go, Kate? You go. Okay. Okay. You go. Sorry.
You go ahead, Sylvia.
So I think Judith Herman is always good, and she's someone who's written about sexual abuse for like years. I think it's a really good book to start with. So if you're looking at sort of something around this field, like Judith Herman's stuff is just amazing.
Something for men that I just listened to Audible, and it was really interesting, and it's called A Little Bit Broken. And it's written by Roz Weston. Roz Weston is on KISS 92.5. He was also on Entertainment Tonight. Shout out to an Actonite. He grew up in the Halton area, and he just talks about the struggles that he had and how to be vulnerable and the journey that he took. And he was so open about his story and his some of his mental health and becoming a dad and how to be a good husband and partner. And it was just, it exceeded my expectations. So for any men out there, I highly recommend that. And when he talks about acting, he nails it every single time.
He's awesome. I've heard that book.
Can I just respond to one of the great comments about queer and gender fluid kids? Absolutely. And so just for people to know that our services are open, supportive. We really, our staff are all trained on in terms of ensuring that we are open, inclusive LGBTQ plus folks, because it's really important. So just for people to know that.
Yeah.
So thank you for that comment. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, sisters, so much for spending this time with us. I hope it was helpful for those of you who, are looking to just like stay on top of, I guess, the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, Two-Spirit, any of the calls for justice. You can definitely find that anywhere. Just Google it and you'll find the calls for justice. Native Women's Association. I love them. I follow them. They do really great work. So, I actually printed up a copy of it and I have it as a hard copy. And every once in a while, I just, kind of refer back to that calls for justice, truth and reconciliation, calls for action, just having Indigenous matters on the forefront, just thinking like you were saying, or you guys were all saying, having that Indigenous perspective at the forefront. Why? Let's start with that, because we can't talk about any of the other issues going on in our country until we really look at Indigenous rights, because they were the first people here. And when we can take care of them, take care of that, then everything else, that's what the elders say, then everything else will begin to heal. Because we can't not know those truths, and that it started when Canada became Canada. And so thank you so much. I will share this link. I have the PDF as well link. And so hopefully for those of you who are watching, following Grandmother's Voice, watch for the Dennis Windego event. That's going to be launched in the next week or so, and it'll be 2 days event, and there'll also be a time in the evening of June 2nd that you can actually come and meet the elders in Milton. So we're hoping to really help amplify the voices of Indigenous people and in what we do.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Nice being with you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.